The wind howled through the empty streets of the city, carrying with it a biting chill that seemed to seep into every crack and crevice. It was late December, and the air was heavy with the promise of snow. The streets were quiet, save for the foy. Occasional car passing by or the distant hum of holiday music spilling out from a nearby shop. Most people had already retreated indoors, seeking warmth and comfort as the temperature continued to drop. Emily Dawson sat on a cold metal bench at the bus stop, her hands tucked under her arms in a futile attempt to stay warm. She wore her scrub's light blue fabric, now slightly damp from the long shift she had just finished at St. Mary's Hospital. Over her scrubs, she had thrown on a thin jacket that did little to shield her from the icy wind. Her breath came out in small clouds, disappearing quickly into the frosty night. She glanced at her watch again, squinting at the glowing numbers. It was nearly midnight, and the last bus should have come 20 minutes ago. Emily sighed, shifting uncomfortably on the hard bench. She hated working nights, but with bills piling up and rent overdue, she didn't have much choice. Every extra hour counted, even if it meant enduring the bone-chilling cold while waiting for public transportation that never seemed to run on time. Her thoughts drifted back to the hospital. The emergency room had been chaotic tonight, as usual. Patients came in waves, some with minor complaints, others fighting for their lives. Emily had done her best to keep up, moving from one bed to the next, checking vitals, administering medications, and offering what little comfort she could. By the end of her shift, her feet ached, her head throbbed, and all she wanted was to crawl into bed and forget about the world for a few hours. But instead, here she was, sitting alone at a bus stop, in the middle of the night, freezing and exhausted. She pulled her jacket tighter around herself, though it made no difference. The cold had already settled deep into her bones, making her shiver uncontrollably. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to block out the discomfort, but the sound of an engine rumbling nearby brought her back to reality. Across the street, a sleek black car idled quietly at the curb. Its headlights cast a soft glow over the pavement, illuminating the swirling mist created by the cold air meeting the warmth of the vehicle's exhaust. Inside the car sat Jack Monroe, billionaire CEO of Monroe Technologies. He leaned back against the leather seat, his fingers drumming absently on the steering wheel as he stared out the window. Jack had spent the evening at yet another gala event, surrounded by people whose names he barely remembered and whose conversations revolved around topics he found utterly meaningless. He had smiled politely, shaken hands, and nodded along to countless speeches, all while feeling increasingly detached from the world around him. These events were part of the job, he reminded himself, but they left him feeling hollowed out as he drove home, stuck in traffic for what felt like hours. His frustration mounted. The holidays always brought out the worst in people, the greed, the excess, the relentless pursuit of status. Jack hated it. He had worked hard to build his company, pouring everything he had into creating something meaningful, but sometimes it felt like the world only cared about the surface-level glamour. When the traffic finally cleared, Jack decided to take a detour, steering his car down quieter streets to avoid the chaos of the main roads. That's when he saw her, a lone figure hunched over on a bus stop bench, illuminated faintly by the dim light above. Something about the scene struck him. Maybe it was the way she sat, so still and small against the vast emptiness of the night. Or maybe it was the fact that anyone would be out here in this weather, alone and unprotected. Curiosity got the better of him, and he slowed the car to a stop. Rolling down the window, he called out, "Are you okay?" Emily looked up, startled by the sudden voice cutting through the silence. She turned her head toward the source, her eyes narrowing as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. A man sat inside a luxurious car, dressed in an expensive suit, his expression unreadable in the dim light. For a moment, she considered ignoring him entirely. Strangers approaching you in the middle of the night rarely had good intentions. "I'm fine," she replied curtly, wrapping her arms even tighter around herself. Her tone made it clear she wanted nothing to do with him. Jack hesitated, unsure whether to press further or leave her be. But something about her demeanor tugged at him, a mix of vulnerability and resilience that resonated deeply. He stepped out of the car, closing the door gently behind him. The sound of his footsteps echoed softly against the pavement as he approached. "You shouldn't be sitting here in this weather," he said, his voice calm but firm. "It's freezing." Emily raised an eyebrow, her guard still firmly in place. "Thanks for your concern, but I'll manage." Jack crossed his arms, exhaling a cloud of warm breath into the cold air. "You look like you've had a rough night. Where are you headed? I can give you a ride." She studied him carefully, searching for any sign of ulterior motives. His polished appearance and fancy car suggested wealth, but there was something genuine in his eyes that caught her off guard. Still, trusting strangers wasn't something Emily took lightly. "Why would you offer me a ride?" she asked skeptically. "We don't even know each other." "Because it's the right thing to do," Jack replied simply. "And because no one deserves to sit out here like this." Emily opened her mouth to argue, then stopped herself. The truth was, she was tired, not just physically, but emotionally drained from the day's events. The thought of climbing into a warm car and escaping the biting wind was tempting, even if it came from a complete stranger. After a long pause, she finally nodded. "Fine, but if this is some kind of trick, I swear." "It's not," Jack interrupted, holding up his hands in mock surrender. "I promise." Reluctantly, Emily stood and followed him to the car. As she slid into the passenger seat, the heat enveloped her like a comforting embrace. She sank back against the plush leather, letting out a sigh of relief as the warmth began. To chase away the chill, Jack climbed back into the driver's seat, glancing at her briefly before pulling away from the curb. "Where am I taking you?" he asked. Emily gave him the address of her apartment building, watching as he entered it into the GPS system. The interior of the car smelled faintly of leather and cologne, a stark contrast to the sterile scent of antiseptic that clung to her. Clothes, she couldn't help but feel out of place, like she didn't belong in such luxury. For a while, neither of them spoke. The quiet hum of the engine filled the space between them, broken only by the occasional click of the turn signal, or the soft whir of the windshield wipers clearing away traces of frost. Emily stared out the window, watching the city blur past in streaks of color and shadow. Despite her initial wariness, she found herself relaxing, lulled by the smooth motion of the car and the steady warmth surrounding her. Finally, Jack broke. "The silence? Long day?" Emily glanced at him, surprised by the question. "Yeah, you could say that. What do you do?" he asked, keeping his eyes on the road. "I'm a nurse," she replied. "Work at St. Mary's." Jack nodded, impressed. "That's admirable. Must be tough, especially during the holidays." "It has its moments," Emily admitted. "Some days are harder than others." They fell into an easy rhythm of conversation. After that, exchanging stories about their respective jobs and lives. Jack told her about his rise from humble beginnings to becoming one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the tech industry. Emily shared anecdotes from her time in nursing, school, and the challenges of working in healthcare. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, they discovered a surprising amount of common ground by the time they reached her apartment building. Emily felt a strange sense of gratitude, not just for the ride, but for the unexpected connection she had formed with a total stranger. As she stepped out of the car, she turned back to Jack. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "I mean it." Jack smiled, leaning across the seat, to meet her gaze. "Anytime. Take care of yourself, Emily." With that, he drove off into the night, leaving her standing on the sidewalk, wondering if she had just imagined the entire encounter. But as she walked upstairs to her apartment, one thing was certain. This chance meeting had left an impression one that might change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The next morning, Emily woke up groggy and disoriented. The events of the previous night felt like a distant dream sitting at the freezing bus stop, the stranger in the expensive car offering her a ride, the warmth of his vehicle wrapping around her like a cocoon. She sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes as she tried to piece it all together. Had it really happened? Or had her tired mind conjured the entire thing? But then she noticed something on her bedside table, a business card. It must have slipped out of Jack's pocket when he handed her his coat during the ride. The card was sleek and minimalist, with just his name, Jack Monroe, printed in bold letters along with his title as CEO of Monroe Technologies and a phone number. Emily picked it up, running her fingers over the smooth surface. It was real. He was real. She stared at the card for a long moment, unsure what to do with it. Part of her wanted to toss it aside and forget about the whole encounter. Strangers didn't usually offer rides to random people in the middle of the night. It wasn't normal. But another part of her couldn't deny the pull she'd felt during their conversation. There was something genuine about Jack, something that made her trust him despite her instincts telling her to be cautious. Emily sighed and placed the card back on the table. She had more pressing things to worry about anyway. Rent was due in 2 days, and she still hadn't paid last month's bill. The hospital paycheck wouldn't cover everything this time, not with the rising costs of groceries and utilities. She pushed herself out of bed, determined to focus on practical matters rather than dwelling on a fleeting interaction with a billionaire. Meanwhile, Jack Monroe sat in his office high above the city, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the bustling streets below. His desk was cluttered with papers, reports, and blueprints for new projects, but none of it held his attention. Instead, his thoughts kept drifting back to Emily, the nurse he had met the night before. There was something about her that stuck with him. Maybe it was the way she carried herself, exuding strength even when she looked so utterly exhausted. Or maybe it was the quiet determination in her voice when she talked about her work. Whatever it was, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that she was someone special. He leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen against the edge of the desk. Normally, he avoided getting involved in other people's lives. Running a multi-billion-dollar company left little room for distractions. But Emily was different. Her story stayed with him, replaying in his mind like a song he couldn't turn off. He wondered what kind of life she led outside of those scrubs, how she managed to keep going day after day in such demanding conditions. After a few minutes of deliberation, Jack reached for his phone. He scrolled through his contacts until he found the note he'd made earlier that morning, Emily's address. He hesitated, wondering if calling her would come across as intrusive. Then again, he reasoned, he could frame it as a professional opportunity rather than a personal favor. That way, it wouldn't seem strange or out of place. With a deep breath, Jack dialed the number he'd scribbled down from memory. It rang twice before Emily answered, her voice hesitant and guarded. "Hello?" "Emily, it's Jack Monroe," he said quickly, cutting straight to the point. "We met last night. Do you remember?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Yeah, I remember," Emily replied cautiously. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Jack assured her. "I just wanted to talk to you about something." "Are you free later today?" Emily frowned, gripping the phone tighter. "What is this about?" "It's work-related," Jack explained. "Well, sort of. I think you might be able to help me with a project I'm working on." "A project?" Emily echoed, skepticism creeping into her tone. "What kind of project?" I'd rather explain in person, Jack said. Can we meet somewhere convenient for you? Emily hesitated, torn between curiosity and caution. On one hand, she didn't want to get mixed up in anything complicated, especially with someone like Jack. On the other hand, she couldn't ignore the possibility that this might be an opportunity worth exploring. Life had taught her to take chances when they presented themselves, even if they came wrapped in uncertainty. Okay, she said finally. Where should we meet? They agreed to meet at a small cafe near Emily's apartment. When Jack arrived, he spotted her immediately. She was sitting by the window, sipping a cup of coffee and looking slightly uncomfortable. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair tied back in a loose ponytail. Compared to the polished executives Jack usually dealt with, Emily seemed refreshingly down dash-to-dash earth. He approached her table with a friendly smile. Hey, thanks for meeting me. Emily nodded, gesturing for him to sit. No problem. So, what's this about? Jack took a seat, folding his hands on the table. First, let me say I appreciate your time. I know you're busy, so I'll get straight to the point. My company is working on a new initiative aimed at improving healthcare access for underserved communities. We're developing mobile clinics, equipped with advanced medical technology, all powered by renewable energy sources. Emily raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite herself. That sounds ambitious. It is, Jack admitted, but I believe it's possible. The challenge is making sure these clinics are designed with real-world needs in mind. That's where you come in. Me? Emily asked, surprised. How could I possibly help with something like that? You're a nurse, Jack said. Simply, you've seen firsthand what patients need, what works and what doesn't. Your perspective would be invaluable to our team. Emily shook her head, leaning back in her chair. I don't know anything about tech or engineering. I'm just a nurse. And that's exactly why you're perfect for this, Jack insisted. We already have plenty of engineers and designers. What we're missing is someone who understands the human side of healthcare. Someone like you. Emily stared at him, unsure what to say. The idea of stepping into such a high-profile role was daunting, to say the least. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight, let alone contributing to projects on this scale. At the same time, the thought of making a difference beyond the walls of the hospital excited her in ways she hadn't anticipated. What would this involve? She asked carefully. You join our consulting team, Jack explained. Your job would be to provide feedback on our designs, test prototypes, and ensure everything aligns with actual patient needs. You wouldn't need any technical expertise. We'd handle that part. All we need is your insight. Emily bit her lip, weighing the pros and cons. On one hand, this could be the chance of a lifetime, an opportunity to expand her horizons and make a bigger impact. On the other hand, she had no idea she was cut out for something like this. What if she failed? What if she let everyone down? I don't know. She began hesitantly. I understand if you need time to think about it, Jack said gently. This isn't a decision you have to make right now. But I truly believe you'd be amazing at it, Emily. And honestly, I think you'd enjoy it. His words lingered in her mind as they finished their conversation. By the time Jack left the cafe, Emily was more confused than ever. Could she really step into a world so far removed from her own? Did she even belong there? Over the next few days, Emily wrestled with the decision. She weighed the risks and rewards, imagining what her life might look like if she accepted Jack's offer. Eventually, curiosity got the better of her. If nothing else, she decided, it would be worth giving it a shot. After all, she reminded herself, sometimes the best opportunities were the ones that scared you the most. When she finally called Jack to accept his proposal, he sounded genuinely pleased. Great, he said. I'll send over some details and arrange for you to visit our headquarters soon. Welcome aboard, Emily." As she hung up the phone, Emily felt a mix of excitement and apprehension swirling inside her. She had no idea what lay ahead, but one thing was certain. Her life was about to change in ways she never could have predicted. The day Emily visited Monroe Technologies for the first time, she woke up feeling a strange mix of excitement and dread. She had spent the past few nights lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she'd made the right decision. The idea of stepping into the corporate world, especially one as grand and intimidating as Jack's company, felt like walking into uncharted territory. Still, she reminded herself that this was an opportunity to grow, to make a real difference. And so, with a deep breath, she got out of bed and prepared for the day ahead. When she arrived at the headquarters, her jaw nearly dropped. The building was massive, sleek, and modern, towering above the surrounding structures like a monument to innovation. Glass walls reflected the morning sunlight, giving the impression that the entire structure was glowing. People bustled in and out, dressed in sharp suits or polished business casual attire. Emily suddenly felt underdressed in her plain blouse and jeans, clutching her bag tightly as she approached the entrance. Inside, the lobby was even more impressive. A wide-open space stretched upward several stories, filled with natural light streaming through the glass ceiling. To one side, a reception desk stood staffed by friendly employees who greeted visitors with practiced smiles. On the other side, a large screen displayed videos showcasing the company's latest projects, everything from cutting-edge medical devices to sustainable energy solutions. Emily couldn't help but feel small and out of place. "Emily!" A familiar voice called out. She turned to see Jack striding toward her, his confident demeanor instantly putting her at ease. He looked different today, not quite as formal as he had in the car, wearing a simple button-down shirt instead of a suit. His smile was warm, genuine. "Welcome," he said, extending a hand. "Ready to see what we're working on?" Emily nodded, though nerves still fluttered in her stomach. "As ready as I'll ever be." Jack led her through the building, explaining various aspects of the company along the way. They passed labs where scientists conducted experiments, design studios where engineers sketched blueprints, and meeting rooms where teams brainstormed ideas. Everywhere Emily looked, people were engaged in their work, their passion evident in every conversation and action. It was overwhelming but inspiring all at once. Finally, they reached a large conference room where a group of individuals waited. Some wore lab coats, others carried tablets or notebooks. When Emily entered, they turned to greet her, shaking her hand and introducing themselves. Their enthusiasm was contagious, and Emily found herself relaxing slightly. "This is Emily Dawson," Jack announced to the group. "She's going to be consulting with us on a mobile clinic project. Her experience as a nurse will be invaluable in ensuring our designs meet real-world needs." The team nodded approvingly, welcoming her warmly. One of the engineers, a young man named Ryan, leaned forward. "We've already got some prototypes ready for testing. We'd love to hear your thoughts." Over the next hour, Emily listened intently as the team presented their progress. They showed her sketches of compact, modular clinics equipped with advanced diagnostic tools, solar panels for power, and water purification systems. Everything was designed to be portable and self-sufficient, capable of serving remote areas without access to traditional healthcare facilities. At first, Emily struggled to keep up with the technical jargon. Words like modular architecture and integrated AI diagnostics flew over her head. But when the discussion shifted to practical applications, how patients would interact with the equipment, how nurses could efficiently use the limited space, she came alive. Drawing from her years of experience, she pointed out potential challenges: narrow hallways that might hinder movement, machines too complex for non-specialists to operate, and storage solutions that didn't account for bulky medical supplies. Her feedback surprised everyone, including herself. At the hospital, Emily often felt like just another cog in the machine, following orders without much say in how things were done. Here, however, her opinions mattered. The team listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions. By the end of the meeting, Emily realized she had contributed something meaningful, not because she understood technology, but because she understood people. Afterward, Jack pulled her aside. "See? You fit in perfectly," he said with a grin. "They're already impressed." Emily shook her head, still processing everything. "I never thought I'd be doing something like this. Honestly, I'm not sure I belong here." "You do," Jack insisted. "You bring a perspective no one else can. Trust me, you're exactly what this project needs." Despite his confidence, Emily remained unsure. The corporate environment was foreign to her, full of rules and expectations she didn't fully understand. Over the next few weeks, she threw herself into learning as much as possible, attending meetings, reviewing designs, and observing tests. Slowly but surely, she began to find her footing. One afternoon, while touring the fabrication lab where prototypes were being built, Emily noticed a flaw in one of the designs. The layout of the examination area left little room for privacy, which could make patients uncomfortable during sensitive procedures. She mentioned it casually to Ryan, the engineer who had introduced himself earlier. Ryan frowned, considering her observation. "That's a good point," he admitted. "We hadn't thought about that." Together, they brainstormed ways to address the issue. Emily suggested adding adjustable partitions that could create private spaces when needed. Ryan loved the idea and immediately began sketching modifications. When the updated design was presented to the team, it received unanimous approval. "That's why you're here," Jack told her later, clearly pleased. "You're making this project better." Emily smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment she hadn't experienced in years. For the first time since starting this journey, she began to believe she might actually belong. Still, doubts lingered. As the weeks went by, Emily noticed subtle tensions within the company. Not everyone shared Jack's vision or his trust in her. Some board members questioned the feasibility of the mobile clinic project, arguing that it wasn't profitable enough to justify the investment. Others criticized Jack's decision to hire someone without formal business training. During one particularly heated meeting, a senior executive named Linda raised her concerns. "With all due respect, Jack, bringing in someone like Emily is risky. She doesn't have the credentials or experience to handle this level of responsibility." Jack's expression hardened. Emily's value isn't measured by credentials. Her insights are based on real-world experience, which is far more valuable than any degree. Linda crossed her arms, unconvinced. "That may be true, but we can't afford to gamble on untested talent." The argument continued, with voices growing louder and tempers flaring. Emily sat silently, feeling like an outsider caught in the crossfire. Later that evening, she confided in Jack. "I don't want to cause problems," she said quietly. "Maybe Linda's right. Maybe I should go back to the hospital." Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Don't let them get to you. Change always comes with resistance. But I promise you, this project matters. And so do you." His words reassured her, but the pressure weighed heavily on her shoulders. Could she really rise to the challenge? Or was she in over her head? As winter gave way to spring, Emily faced each obstacle with determination. With Jack's support and the team's collaboration, she pushed forward, driven by the belief that their work could transform lives. Little did she know, the hardest battles were yet to come, and they would test her resolve in ways she couldn't imagine. As the weeks turned into months, Emily found herself settling into a rhythm at Monroe Technologies. The initial shock of stepping into such an unfamiliar world had faded, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. She woke up each morning knowing that her work mattered not just to the company, but to the countless lives their project could touch. Still, the challenges were far from over. The mobile clinic project was ambitious, and as deadlines loomed closer, tensions within the team began to rise. Everyone wanted the project to succeed, but opinions clashed on how best to achieve that goal. Engineers argued with designers about functionality versus aesthetics. Budget constraints forced tough decisions about which features to prioritize and which to cut. And then there were the critics, those who doubted whether the project was worth the effort at all. One afternoon, during a particularly heated meeting, Linda, the same senior executive who had questioned Emily's role earlier, voiced her concerns again. "We're spending millions on this idea," she said sharply, gesturing toward the prototype displayed in the center of the room. "And for what? To send a few clinics into rural areas? How is that going to make a real impact?" Emily felt her stomach tighten. She hated being put on the spot, especially when it came to defending something so personal to her. But before she could respond, Jack stepped in. "This isn't just about sending out a few clinics," he said firmly. "It's about proving that technology can be used to serve humanity. If we succeed, we'll create a model that others can. Follow a way to bring healthcare to underserved communities worldwide." Linda rolled her eyes. "That sounds nice in theory, but let's talk reality. Do you know how many regulatory hurdles we'll face? Or how much maintenance these clinics will require once they're deployed? This isn't charity. It's business." "It doesn't have to be one or the other," Jack shot back. "Profit and purpose aren't mutually exclusive." The argument dragged on, with voices rising and tempers flaring. Emily sat quietly, trying to process everything. She admired Jack's passion, but she couldn't ignore the doubts creeping into her mind. What if Linda was right? What if the project was too ambitious, too impractical? Could they really pull it off? After the meeting ended, Emily lingered behind, watching as the rest of the team filed out. Jack noticed her hesitation and walked over. "You okay?" he asked gently. Emily hesitated, unsure how to put her thoughts into words. "I don't know," she admitted finally. "This whole thing, it feels like we're building castles in the sky. I mean, I believe in the idea, I really do, but sometimes I wonder if we're setting ourselves up for failure." Jack sighed, leaning against the edge of the conference table. "Change never comes easy," he said. "Every great innovation faced resistance at first. People thought cars were dangerous, airplanes impossible, smartphones unnecessary. But look where we are now." "I get that," Emily replied. "But those inventions didn't have to deal with board meetings and budget cuts and people questioning every step of the way." Jack chuckled softly. "True, but remember, you're not alone in this. We're a team, and together we can figure it out." His words brought some comfort, but Emily still struggled with self-doubt. At night, after long days of meetings and testing, she often lay awake, replaying conversations in her head and second-guessing her contributions. Was she doing enough? Did she deserve to be here? The weight of responsibility pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. Despite her internal struggles, Emily continued to push forward. Her insights proved invaluable time and again, helping the team refine the design and functionality of the mobile clinics. She worked closely with Ryan, the young engineer, to ensure that every detail, from the layout of the examination rooms to the placement of medical equipment, was practical and efficient. Together, they tested prototypes, identified flaws, and brainstormed solutions. One breakthrough came when Emily suggested incorporating telemedicine capabilities into the clinics. In remote areas where specialists were scarce, patients could consult with doctors via video calls expanding access to care without requiring additional staff. The idea was met with enthusiasm, and soon, the team began developing software to support the feature. Another challenge arose when the cost of solar panels threatened to exceed the project's budget. Emily proposed using smaller panels combined with energy-efficient appliances to reduce expenses. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it kept the project moving forward while staying within financial limits. Each small victory boosted Emily's confidence, reminding her why she had taken this leap of faith in the first place. Yet, even as progress was made, the pressure mounted. Board members demanded updates, investors grew impatient, and media outlets began speculating about the project's viability. Rumors spread that Monroe Technologies was pouring money into a doomed endeavor, damaging the company's reputation. Through it all, Jack remained steadfast. He shielded Emily from the worst of the criticism, deflecting questions from reporters and reassuring nervous stakeholders. "We're close," he told them repeatedly. "Trust me." But trust was in short supply. One evening after another, grueling day of meetings, Emily found herself sitting alone in the lab, staring at the prototype. The sleek, futuristic structure gleamed under the fluorescent lights, a testament to months of hard work. Yet, instead of pride, she felt only exhaustion. Jack entered the room quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Emily and sat down beside her. "You've been pushing yourself too hard," he said softly. "Take a break. You deserve it." Emily shook her head. "I can't. Not until this is finished." "It's not going to fall apart if you take a weekend off," Jack insisted. "You're human, Emily. You need rest." She sighed, taking a sip of the warm coffee. "It's not just the workload. It's everything. The doubts, the criticism, the fear of failing. Sometimes I wonder if I should have stayed at the hospital. At least there, I knew what I was doing." Jack studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Do you regret coming here?" "No," Emily said quickly. "Not really. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this." "You're stronger than you think," Jack replied. "And you're not alone. We're in this together, remember?" His words brought tears to her eyes, though she blinked them away before he could notice. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe they could pull this off. Maybe all the late nights and arguments and sacrifices would pay off in the end. The turning point came unexpectedly. A local news outlet ran a story about the mobile clinic project, highlighting its potential to revolutionize healthcare in underserved areas. The piece featured interviews with members of the team, including Emily, who spoke passionately about the importance of accessible medical care. Overnight, public opinion shifted. Social media lit up with messages of support, and donations poured in from individuals eager to contribute to the cause. Encouraged by the positive response, the team doubled down on their efforts. They finalized the design, conducted rigorous tests, and prepared for the first deployment. Emily threw herself into the preparations, overseeing every detail to ensure nothing was overlooked. Finally, the day arrived. The first mobile clinic was loaded onto a truck and driven to a rural town several hours away. Emily traveled with the team, her heart pounding with anticipation. As they set up the clinic, she watched villagers gather, their faces filled with curiosity and hope. Children peeked shyly around their parents' legs, while elderly residents leaned on canes, waiting patiently for their turn. When the doors opened, a line formed almost instantly. Patients flowed through the clinic, receiving checkups, medications, and consultations. Emily moved from station to station, assisting wherever needed. Despite the chaos, there was a sense of order, a quiet efficiency that spoke to months of careful planning. By the end of the day, hundreds of people had been treated. As Emily stood outside the clinic, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she felt a wave of emotion wash over her. This was why she had joined the project, to make a difference, no matter how small. And now, standing amidst the smiles and gratitude of strangers, she knew they had succeeded. Jack approached her, a proud smile on his face. "Well, what do you think?" Emily turned to him, her own smile breaking through. "I think we did it." "Yes," Jack agreed. "We did." For the first time in months, Emily felt truly at peace. The road ahead would still be challenging, but for now, she allowed herself to savor the moment. Together, they had proven that even the wildest dreams could become reality if you were willing to fight for them. The success of the first mobile clinic deployment was a turning point for Emily and the entire team at Monroe Technologies. News of the project spread quickly, fueled by glowing reports from the villagers who had benefited from the clinic's services. Social media buzzed with praise, and local news outlets ran follow-up stories highlighting the impact the clinic had made. For the first time in months, Emily felt a sense of validation, not just for herself, but for everyone who had poured their hearts into the project. But as the excitement grew, so did the pressure. The demand for more clinics skyrocketed almost overnight. Requests poured in from communities across the country, rural towns, inner-city neighborhoods, disaster-stricken regions, all desperate for access to health care. While the response was encouraging, it also brought new challenges. How could they scale up production without compromising quality? Where would they find the resources to meet such overwhelming need? Jack called an emergency meeting to discuss the next steps. The conference room was packed with team members, their faces reflecting a mix of pride and anxiety. Emily sat quietly at the back of the room, listening as voices rose and fell in heated debate. Some argued for expanding rapidly, seizing the momentum while public interest was high. Others cautioned against rushing, warning that scaling too quickly could lead to mistakes or oversights. "We can't afford to slow down," one engineer insisted. "If we wait, people will lose faith in us. But if we rush, we risk delivering subpar clinics," countered another. "That's worse than doing nothing." Jack raised his hand to quiet the room. "Both sides have valid points," he said. "We need to strike a balance, move fast enough to meet demand, but carefully enough to ensure everything works as intended." Emily spoke up hesitantly. "What if we start small? Maybe focus on 3 or 4 more clinics first, perfecting the process before committing to larger numbers?" Her suggestions sparked a lively discussion. Eventually, the team agreed to take a phased approach, rolling out additional clinics incrementally, while gathering feedback to improve future designs. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was practical, and it gave everyone a clear path forward. Despite the plan, tensions within the company continued to simmer. The board of directors remained skeptical, questioning whether the project was worth the ongoing investment. Linda, in particular, voiced her concerns loudly and often. She argued that the mobile clinics were draining resources better spent on more profitable ventures. "We're a tech company, not a charity," she snapped during one meeting. "At some point, we need to think about our bottom line." Jack bristled at her words, but kept his composure. "This isn't just about profits," he said firmly. "It's about making a difference. If we play our cards right, this project will pay off, not just financially, but in ways that matter." Linda rolled her eyes. Idealism won't keep the lights on. The argument left Emily feeling uneasy. She understood Linda's perspective. Businesses needed to make money to survive. But she couldn't help but feel frustrated by the lack of vision. To her, the project represented something bigger, a chance to use technology for good, to prove that innovation could serve humanity, as well as shareholders. Jack noticed her discomfort and pulled her aside after the meeting. "Don't let them get to you," he said gently. "They're scared because this is uncharted territory. But we're proving them wrong, one step at a time." Emily nodded, though doubt still lingered in her mind. She wondered how long they could keep fighting against resistance, how much longer Jack could shield her from criticism. What if the board decided to shut the project down entirely? The thought sent a chill down her spine. In the weeks that followed, Emily threw herself into her work, determined to stay focused despite the mounting stress. She collaborated closely with Ryan and the rest of the engineering team to refine the clinic designs based on feedback from the first deployment. Together, they addressed minor issues, adjusting storage compartments, improving ventilation systems, and tweaking the telemedicine software to handle higher call volumes. Each improvement brought them closer to creating a model that could be replicated on a larger scale. One evening, as Emily stayed late to review test results, Jack joined her in the lab. He leaned against a counter, watching her scroll through pages of data on a tablet. "You've been working nonstop," he said finally. "When was the last time you took a break?" Emily glanced up, surprised by the question. "I don't know. A few days ago, maybe?" Jack shook his head. "That's not healthy. You're going to burn yourself out." "I'm fine," she replied, though the dark circles under her eyes told a different story. "Besides, there's too much to do." "Which is exactly why you need to pace yourself," Jack countered. "You can't pour from an empty cup, Emily." She sighed, setting the tablet aside. I don't want to let anyone down. This project means so much to me, to all of us." "It means a lot to me, too," Jack admitted. "But none of this would be possible without you. Don't forget that." His words struck a chord, reminding her of why she had taken this leap of faith in the first place. For all the doubts and struggles, she knew she was making a difference. And that knowledge gave her strength to keep going, even when the odds seemed stacked against her. As the second round of clinics prepared for deployment, Emily traveled with the team once again. This time, they headed to an urban neighborhood plagued by poverty and neglect. The streets were lined with dilapidated buildings, and the air carried the faint scent of decay. Yet, amidst the hardship, there was resilience. Residents greeted the team warmly, eager to see what the clinic could offer. The setup went smoothly, thanks to lessons learned from the first deployment. Within hours, the clinic was operational, treating patients ranging from young children with fevers to elderly residents battling chronic illnesses. Emily moved between stations, assisting doctors and nurses, answering questions, and offering comfort to those in need. One patient stood out, a young girl named Mia, no older than 6, who arrived clutching a stuffed rabbit. Her mother explained that Mia had been suffering from asthma attacks for weeks, unable to afford medication. As Emily helped administer treatment, she noticed the fear in Mia's wide eyes. "It's okay," Emily said softly, kneeling to meet the girl's gaze. "We're here to help." Mia clutched her rabbit tighter, but managed a small nod. By the time they finished, her breathing had improved, and a hint of a smile appeared on her face. Watching the transformation filled Emily with a deep sense of fulfillment. Moments like these reminded her why she had become a nurse, and why she had chosen to take this unconventional path. Back at headquarters, the team celebrated another successful deployment. Reports showed that the second round of clinics had treated even more patients than the first, further proving the project's potential. Public support continued to grow, with donations pouring in from individuals and organizations eager to contribute. But behind the scenes, cracks began to show. Financial strain weighed heavily on the company, forcing Jack to make difficult decisions about resource allocation. The board grew increasingly vocal in their disapproval, threatening to withdraw funding unless tangible returns materialized soon. Even some team members started to question whether the project was sustainable in the long term. Emily felt the weight of their doubts pressing down on her. Despite the successes, she couldn't shake the fear that it might not be enough. What If they couldn't secure enough funding to continue? What if the board forced Jack to abandon the project altogether? Late one night, as she sat alone in the lab reviewing plans, Jack found her. He didn't say anything at first, simply sitting beside her in silence. After a while, he spoke softly. "We'll figure it out," he said. "No matter what happens, we'll find a way to keep moving forward." Emily looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. "What if we can't?" She whispered. Jack placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll try again. Failure isn't the end. It's part of the journey. And as long as we believe in what we're doing, we'll find a way to make it work." His words brought a fragile sense of hope. Emily wiped her tears and nodded, drawing strength from his unwavering determination. Together, they faced the uncertainty ahead, knowing that even in the darkest moments, they had each other and a shared vision worth fighting for. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. Emily and the team worked tirelessly to prepare for the third round of mobile clinic deployments. Despite the mounting challenges, they pushed forward with renewed determination. The success of the first two deployments had proven that their idea wasn't just a dream, it was a viable solution to a real problem. But as demand grew, so did the pressure to deliver. Jack faced increasing scrutiny from the board of directors. Linda led the charge, arguing that the project was draining resources without showing enough financial return. "We've invested millions," she said during one particularly tense meeting. "And what do we have to show for it? A few clinics treating a handful of patients? That's not sustainable." Jack stood his ground, his voice calm but firm. "This isn't about short-term profits. It's about creating lasting change. Every life we touch matters." Linda crossed her arms, clearly unconvinced. "Change costs money, Jack, and right now we're hemorrhaging it." Emily watched the exchange silently, her heart sinking. She knew Linda wasn't entirely wrong. The company couldn't keep funding the project indefinitely without seeing some kind of return. But she also knew that abandoning the project now would mean turning their backs on the people who needed them most. After the meeting, Jack pulled Emily aside. "Don't worry about them," he said. "We'll find a way to make this work." "How?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "They're not going to wait forever. We'll figure it out," Jack replied confidently. Together. In an effort to ease the financial strain, Jack decided to explore partnerships with nonprofit organizations and government agencies. He reached out to foundations dedicated to healthcare access and pitched the mobile clinic project as a scalable solution to a global issue. To his relief, several groups expressed interest, offering grants and logistical support in exchange for collaboration. Meanwhile, Emily focused on optimizing the clinics to reduce costs without sacrificing quality. She worked closely with Ryan and the engineering team to streamline production processes, source cheaper materials, and develop modular components that could be easily replaced or upgraded. Each small improvement brought them closer to sustainability. That one breakthrough came when Emily suggested incorporating community training programs into the deployment process. Local residents could learn basic medical skills, such as administering first aid or operating simple diagnostic tools, allowing them to assist with day-to-day operations. This not only reduced staffing needs, but also empowered communities to take ownership of their healthcare. The idea was met with enthusiasm, and soon the team began developing educational materials and workshops to accompany each clinic. Emily took charge of designing the curriculum, drawing on her experience as a nurse to create clear, practical guides. For the first time in months, she felt hopeful that they might actually pull this off. The third deployment took place in a remote mountain town accessible only by dirt roads. The journey was grueling, with trucks navigating steep inclines and rocky terrain. But when they finally arrived, the sight of villagers gathered eagerly at the makeshift welcome area filled Emily with a sense of purpose. Setting up the clinic proved more challenging than usual due to the rugged environment. Equipment had to be carried manually to higher elevations, and generators struggled to cope with the thin air. Yet, despite the obstacles, the team persevered, driven by the knowledge that their efforts would bring much-needed care to a community. That had gone without for years. As the clinic opened its doors, Emily moved through the stations, assisting doctors and nurses while observing how patients interacted with the new features. She noticed families gathering around informational posters, asking questions about preventive care and healthy living. Children participated enthusiastically in hands-on demonstrations, learning how to use bandages and check vital signs. It was proof that their approach was working, not just treating illness, but fostering long-term change. By the end of the week, hundreds of patients had been treated, and dozens of residents had completed the training program. As the team packed up to leave, villagers lined the road, waving goodbye and shouting words of gratitude. Emily stood beside Jack, watching the scene unfold with tears in her eyes. "We did it," she said softly. "We really did it." Jack smiled, his expression a mix of pride and relief. "Yes, we did." Back at headquarters, the mood was cautiously optimistic. Reports from the third deployment showed significant improvements in efficiency and cost-effectiveness. Partnerships with nonprofits and government agencies provided a steady stream of funding, easing the financial burden. Even the board began to soften their stance, impressed by the tangible results. But the biggest surprise came when a major news outlet ran a feature story on the mobile clinic project. The piece highlighted its innovative design, community-focused approach, and measurable impact. Within days, Monroe Technologies received thousands of messages from supporters around the world, including offers of donations, volunteer work, and technical expertise. The sudden surge of public interest reignited the team's energy. They began planning for larger-scale deployments, expanding into neighboring states and eventually overseas. Emily found herself at the center of it all, coordinating logistics, training new staff, and refining the curriculum. Her role had evolved far beyond what she ever imagined, yet she embraced it wholeheartedly. One evening, as she sat in her office reviewing plans for the next phase, Jack knocked on the doorframe. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. Emily looked up and smiled. "Of course." He entered, closing the door behind him. "I wanted to say thank you," he said, taking a seat across from her. "None of this would have been possible without you." Emily shook her head. "No, it wouldn't have been possible without both of us and everyone else on the team. We did this together." Jack nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "Still, I want you to know how much I appreciate everything you've done. You've changed my life, Emily, and because of you, we're changing lives all over the world." His words brought tears to her eyes. "You've changed mine too," she admitted. "I never thought I'd be part of something like this. It's incredible." They sat in silence for a moment, reflecting on how far they'd come. From that freezing night at the bus stop to standing on the brink of global impact, their journey had been anything but ordinary. But through every challenge, they had leaned on each other, finding strength in shared purpose. As snow began to fall outside, blanketing the city in a soft white glow, Emily turned back to her work. There was still so much to do, so many lives to touch, so many challenges to overcome. But for the first time in a long time, she felt truly hopeful. Together, they had proven that even the wildest dreams could become reality, if you were willing to fight for them. And fight they would, side by side, until the world became a little brighter, one mobile clinic at a time.